Starlink.
Yeah, our camera is there, transmitting live on YouTube.
Turn off your phones,
Please. Yeah, I'm just here to say a few words about the space we're in. Welcome you all. My name is Ivan. I'm the programs manager here at Beyond Baroque Literary Arts Center. We're a nonprofit dedicated to the possibilities of language. We're currently in the Wanda Coleman Theater. It was just renamed after the poet, unofficial LA Poet Laureate. Goes way back here, and we have our books available in the bookstore as well if you want to know more about Wanda. I want to acknowledge our presence on the ancestral and unceded territory of the Tongva peoples as the first peoples of this land. We acknowledge the wrong done to indigenous peoples through colonialism and genocidal practices. And as an arts organization, we are committed to uplifting their communities, stories, and cultures. Beyond Baroque is an organization that was founded in 1968 by George Drury Smith. This building used to be the original Venice City Hall building, and it operated as such until the late 70s. After that, Beyond Baroque moved into the space to become a house for poets and artists for the community of Venice and Los Angeles. We've been here for 55 years and continue the legacy of Beyond Baroque through extensive programming, from readings with emerging and established authors to exhibitions in the Mike Kelly Gallery. Currently, we have the exhibition of Radiance by local artist Gila Hirsch. And this coming month, we are celebrating National Poetry Month. We'll be having readings and a variety of poets from, including places like New York, as well as from Latin America. We are having a reading of queer, trans, interdisciplinary poetics, and also a translation program featuring authors from Puerto Rico, Colombia, Los Angeles here, and Mexico. And we're ending the month with the third edition of the Poetry Film Festival. Our tickets will be out in a few days, and this year we'll be screening Life is a Saxophone, a documentary film on the life of Watts poet Kamal Daoud, directed by S. Pearl Sharp. And we'll be screening a selection of international poem-based videos or films. It'll be a whole day event. There'll be food and screenings from 1 p.m. to 6 p.m., so feel free to check that out. And you can also sign up to our historic Monday night fiction workshop and our Wednesday night poetry workshop happening every week on Zoom. Lastly, a huge thank you to the team that makes it happen, to our directors, Quentin Ring, Jimmy Vega, Michelle Rafael, Tech Master, Eric Alberg, and Leon today joining us in the booth, and Genesis Perez in the bookstore. Please support our authors today. We have some books of the readers sharing space with us today. And of course, you already have a copy of the new issue of the Santa Monica Review, which we're all here for. And a huge shout out to Andrew and to the editorial team of Santa Monica Review for continuing pushing out issues and continuing this tradition, because it goes way back, this connection of Santa Monica Review and Beyond Baroque. So I think Andrew can share more about that, and he'll be hosting today's reading. So please give him a warm welcome. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, Yvonne. Thanks for being here, and thanks for being out there. Indeed, we have a long and wonderful relationship with Beyond Baroque, both personally and institutionally, and I'm so grateful to the crew here for hosting us. The Santa Monica Review is now in its 36th year, founded by my mentor and yours, Jim Krusoe, and it's published, thanks Jim, and it's published twice yearly. This is our spring issue, and we've been very lucky to be hosted here by Beyond Baroque over the years, and will also be hosted by the the Edie, which is the Santa Monica Performing Arts Center, for another reading on Sunday, April 7th. And you can go to the website to purchase tickets for that. Speaking of the website, I had to start a new feature called the errata page. And I had to look up errata to make sure that I would spell it correctly. That's a proofreading joke. Because there's a mistake in the current journal that I'm a little embarrassed about. And if you're at home, I've already asked the audience here to play along. There's a beautiful short story by Jeffrey Moskowitz, and there's a line that appears twice. And this editor gives you permission to get out your pen and change the line at the bottom of page 130 to "there's no on to move on to," which is actually the joke, which is actually the correct line, which we messed up. So it shouldn't be "there's no one to move on to." It should be "there's no on to move on to." And I apologize for that, and I mean to get it right. Short of crossing out the two E's on all 5,000 copies of the journal, I'm doing my best. So please fix it on your own. And thank you, Jeffrey Moskowitz, for understanding. And with that, I'll say that we're very pleased to present 4 readers today at Beyond Baroque, 4 completely different other contributors at the event at the Santa Monica Performing Arts Center, because we have a bounty of very local contributors for this issue. As I wrote in the press release for the issue, we've got the Inland Empire, LA, Orange County represented, a Bay Area. It's really very much a Southern California and California issue, and I'm pleased about the kind of local connection there. And it's a terrific issue with both new and returning writers. So the people who will be reading today will be reading in the order advertised. And just for the sake of consistency, I'm going to introduce them by reading the contributors' notes that appear in the back of the journal, except to say that the first reader, Denise, is my Orange County compadre, and so she'll be reading first, and her bio goes like this. Denise Heyl McEvoy lives and writes in Orange County. This is her second appearance in Santa Monica Review. Her work has also been published in American Short Fiction and the Iowa Review, which nominated her for the PEN America Dow Short Story Prize for Emerging Writers in 2019. She is also an alumna of the Community Writers Workshop in Olympic Valley, the Chapman University Community Creative Writing Workshop, and Amherst College. Please welcome Denise.
Hello. So if I had known I was going to be reading this aloud, I might have used smaller words, but I will do my best. As I was practicing this morning, I was like, oh, who put all these big words in here? Okay, anyway. So this is the beginning, the first about 4 or 5 pages of my story, Rescue, which appears in the issue. Hemmed in by affluent suburban neighborhoods, the nature preserve offers up a 2-mile sliver of approachable wilderness. Its centerpiece is a glittering estuary where freshwater rivers merge with ocean tides. Muscular, silver-toned fish leap from the sapphire water, and birds skim above its surface. Local residents and financial supporters explain, with proprietary pride, that the preserve is one of the few remaining wetlands in Southern California. Nestled into a hillside within the preserve is an interpretive center because the natural world speaks a foreign language. 2 hours after sunrise on a spring day, a red-tailed hawk wheels 80 feet above the bluff that shadows the estuary. Riding the updrafts that rise from the warming earth, he scans the ground for movement. A woman and a dog make slow progress along a trail that is starkly pale against the vegetation. Rabbits, lizards, squirrels, and small birds scatter into the scrub or under rocks as they advance. The woman lets her pug dive after lizards, knowing he is not quick enough to catch them. They walk here every morning from her house a few blocks away. When she gets out his leash, the pug spins and leaps, grunting with joy. He is always elated to strike out into the world, which fortifies her sense that it must be, on the whole, a wonderful place. The day is clear and mild. During the drought, which toasted the brush to a crisp brown and turned the soil to ankle-deep dust, a cloudless day foretold another dry day in a devastatingly long run of them. But this year, the winter rains were plentiful, and morning sunshine is an uncomplicated pleasure. The native plants, lemonade berry, toyon, boxthorn, buckwheat, sage, are green and fresh. The woman crushes their leaves in her fingers and inhales the bracing, astringent odors. The serenity of the landscape, her attachment to the dog, and his devotion to her are a restorative combination, more effective in her case than antidepressants. The trail descends into a gully. The dog snuffles at the margins of the bushes, taking inventory of the animals that have passed by in the last 24 hours. King snake, gopher, burrowing owl, shrew, coyote. The dog's hackles rise. He resists the tug of the leash briefly and then falls into step with the woman. This section of the path is overgrown. They walk single file with the dog scouting in front. Seeds and burrs cling to his coat. Detecting a family of desert cottontails hidden in the boxthorn, he halts. Foliage rustles as the rabbits retreat deeper into the brush. The pug can't sneak up on anything. His breathing sounds like an old man's asthmatic wheeze. Hundreds of years of breeding have given him a facial structure barely capable of respiration, as if people set out to create a companion unlikely to survive without them. But dogs could do worse than marry their fates to human beings. It is not the strongest species who thrive, but those most adept at compensating for their weaknesses. The pug's labored breathing sometimes alarms the woman. She hears it as a reproach, more trenchant for being unintended, and it corroborates her ethical qualms about dog breeding. The pug is a rescue. At the animal shelter, she looked into his eyes and felt she and the dog understood each other. His wrinkled brow and forehead appeared to show concern. The bulge of his eyeballs implied frankness. If eyes are the windows to the soul, the pug's promised a 180-degree view. Although the woman's sense of immediate intimacy was based mostly on the anatomical peculiarities of the dog's face, her intuition was correct. In that moment, the two of them knew almost all they would ever need to know about one another. The trail levels off to skirt the marsh. Among the reeds, a snowy egret stands stock still, up to its elegant knees in water. A flock of California least terns flies low, gliding and banking as one. The tern is an endangered species, and its presence is often cited as a reason for the preserve's founding. Less frequently mentioned is the political and financial clout of the neighbors. 35 years ago, the developers who planned to dredge the channels and build a sprawling marina conceded defeat. They relocated their project 20 miles down the coast, where the opposition was less well established. The properties that directly border the preserve have the best views. At low tide, the mudflats waft their stink over the multi-million-dollar homes that gaze down upon them. Where the path forks, they cut left to follow the trail through a stand of trees, and birdsong erupts all around them. To the woman, it sounds like a jubilant, impromptu symphony, melody, harmony, counterpoint, an auditory assurance that all is well. But the animals are more analogous to soloists than an orchestra, and she is not their audience. They communicate to their own kind. A red-winged blackbird announces, "This tree is mine." A marsh wren asks his mate where she has gone. The strident, repetitive chirp of a ground squirrel, which the woman assumes is a bird, warns of predators, referring to the woman, her dog, and the coyote that watches them silently from the brush, long overdue to return to her den for the day. Catching the scent of the coyote, the pug hurries past, cowering close to the legs of the woman, who strides along as if the menacing canine is beneath her notice. The coyote smells his fear. Like all domestic dogs, the pug has an odor that's part animal and part chemical. Adult male canine layered with notes of flea and tick shampoo, medications, and laundry soap. Most salient is an acrid, yeasty scent, a symptom of his atopic dermatitis. People say the pug smells bad, but the coyote doesn't think in those terms. Her categorizations are determined by practicalities. There are things that might eat her and things that she might eat. There is prey that is hard to catch but easy to kill, and prey that is slow but unpredictable. Where the trail bends around a cottonwood tree, the woman and the dog come abruptly upon a red-tailed hawk, 3 feet from the ground, just lifting off. The bird and the woman are equally startled. His head swivels toward her. The powerful downbeat of his wings creates a gust of wind that rushes at her face. Because it coincides with her own sharp inhale, she feels as if the bird has forced her mouth open and pushed the air down her throat. His scoop, snatch, rise rhythm disrupted, the hawk falters, loosening his grip on the brown bundle clutched in his talons. It squirms free and falls to the ground. As the bird circles low overhead, his cargo unfurls. It is a desert cottontail, 8 days old and no bigger than the woman's palm. The rabbit blinks. He is unhurt but too terrified to move. The woman fervently wishes the rabbit would run for cover, but she keeps still. As a child, she was devoted to Wild Kingdom, and the television documentary series taught her about herself as well as the natural world. One Sunday's episode might focus on the migrations of an antelope herd, and watching a cheetah single out, harry, and pursue an antelope, she would dig her nails into her palms, yearning for its escape. The next week, during an episode about big cats, she might find herself rooting for a sprinting mother cheetah to bring down the evasive antelope that would feed her 2 hungry cubs. 48 years later, she still carries with her a distrust of her own sympathies. The dog is as motionless as the rabbit. His desire to lunge for it is in equilibrium with his fear of the hawk. It is only when the bird spirals higher, 15 feet above the cottonwood's topmost branches, that he takes a slow step toward the rabbit. The woman jerks his leash tight, emboldening him to leap, secure in the certainty he cannot reach the rabbit, which is not worth a fight with the hawk. The cottontail skitters to the nearest bush and disappears into its depths. The woman exhales. She looks forward to telling her daughter about the encounter the next time they talk. It is not always easy to come up with subjects that merit the attention of her daughter, who is in law school and has many important things on her mind. She resolves not to characterize the rabbit's escape as a happy ending.
Thank you. That was beautiful. And that was Denise Heyl McEvoy. If you're get a hold of the actual copy of the Santa Monica Review, it's the second story, and it's called Rescue. It's such a beautiful description of the interface between the human and natural ecologies. Our next reader is Bryan D. Price, and his life goes a little bit like this. Author of A Plea for Secular Gods, Elegies, recently out from What Books Press. His stories and poems have appeared or are forthcoming in Diagram, American Chordata, Boulevard, JMWW, Rhino Poetry, and elsewhere. He lives in San Diego, California. And I'll have to say, as someone who reads lots and lots of submissions and manuscripts, the real test of how you fall in love with the piece is if you cannot physically stop reading it. And that was my experience with this gorgeous piece. Please welcome Bryan Price.
Hello. I want to thank Andrew and Santa Monica Review, and of course Beyond Baroque as well, for hosting this. So I'm going to start, I'm just going to read kind of like a middle, or towards the end, and it's kind of like the heaviest part of a heavy story, so I apologize if I bring anybody down. Okay. It was late, but the tables were still full, and it seemed as if even more people were out enjoying the cool night air. I should say we're in Munich right now. I suggested we go back to my hotel, which was close, on Orleansplatz, across the street from the Ostbahnhof. We picked up a bottle of some kind of Amaro and made the short walk. He was no longer recording and asked what kind of business I was in. It confused me for a moment, and he said that I told him I was in Munich on business. I said apologetically that in a sense it was a lie, but I reminded him business is a funny word that has many meanings, not just commerce. Sometimes we mean it to refer to anything organized or done with purpose. When you break up with someone or explain to them why you're leaving them, you might refer to it later as a grim bit of business. Business is something that has to be done, perhaps even transacted, but it is not always meant to describe a vocation. Siedelmeyer shrugged and said, "Fair enough, but so why did you come here?" "The reason I was in Munich," I told him, "was because my father died here a few years before, not far from where we were on Orleansplatz. The whole event was a mystery. We had no idea he had gone there. He had no business being there, no relations, was not a person known to be cosmopolitan or even to travel such long distances. To my knowledge, he never left the United States before that." "I see," Siedelmeyer said. He had been rolling a cigarette and handed it over to me. We stopped so he could light it. "You're here on a mission," he said. "I don't know why I'm here," I replied. "I wanted to uncover something, but when I got there, that desire became more like a daydream. I thought I might enact some kind of detective's procedure, but I didn't have the will to go around doing that kind of legwork. It was not in my nature. My mind was made up to just let sleeping dogs lie. Maybe," Siedelmeyer suggested, "you're here to witness the last world he saw, the world that vanished before his eyes, a world that vanished before everyone's eyes. Europe does have that effect on people." "Perhaps," I said. The hotel room was stuffy, so we opened the big windows that looked out at the train station. Noise came up from Orleansplatz, and we both sat smoking, holding our cigarettes outside the window, staring at the streets below. He asked me if he could record some more. Before I could answer, he took a device from his bag. It was rectangular, and when he held it vertically, it had a round hole at the top. He said it was a video camera. He put his phone on the bathroom sink and then set up just off to the side of me. I looked out the window, not down at the street, but at the building across the way. He said the phone would record a different oral perspective, a watery quality in my voice echoing off the tile. "It will sound strange," he said, melancholy. I poured a glass of Amaro, and he asked about my dream, about the person in it. "Who was it?" he asked, "man or woman?" I told him it was my ex-wife, Lena. "Where is Lena now?" he asked. I said, "I don't know." And he replied, "Would you like to talk to Lena?" I looked into his camera, and he said, "No, look out the window. Lena is out there. Talk to her." My eyes closed, and I could feel them welling up with fluid. Not tears, but something else. Something just as emotionally aqueous, but for some reason, I didn't feel like thinking of whatever it was as tears. I was drawn again to the eye of the camera, and he said, "Lena's not here. She's out there, in the ether, like moonlight. Talk to her." I tried to conjure her face, imagine what she might have looked like at this point. I had been thinking of her. I guess he caught me at the right moment, jet-lagged, sleep-deprived, a little bit drunk. I stared at the building across the way where there was a little yellow light glowing in a window. "There are times," I began, "when things are no longer right. Something is off-kilter or askew. Something has shifted radically in what I can only call consciousness. I'm thinking about looking at pictures of you. Somewhere around there are pictures, very small, perhaps the size of postage stamps. We took them in a photo booth on a day when our love was still strong. Something collectible, a material possession, but not quite." The word souvenir comes to mind, and whenever I think of that word, I wonder if object ever replies to subject or becomes its own subject, a thing that thinks and wants back. I am convinced that what everyone wants is to be remembered. At some point, I closed my eyes so that I could feel the past more clearly and continued to speak. I am thinking about our old house on Linden Street, in the unkempt yard with the loquat tree and the dead rosemary bush, dandelions growing up about chest high. I'm staring now from the northwest-facing window, staring at our neighbor's garage. They painted it orange or peach and converted it into the kind of room for a baby to sleep in. On occasions, one of the parents will play something on an Oberheim synthesizer. I think the father was a musician, but I've heard the mother playing Brahms as well, which made me want to fall asleep in someone's arms. Looking east, I can see that they are burying the power lines beneath the street. I suppose that's its own kind of progress. The sound, though, is constant, unrelenting. I watched them wheel in an immense drill and thought immediately of the Kola super deep borehole, humanity at its most inane, annihilation for the sake of annihilation. I am not curious about what lies beneath the Earth's surface, but I suppose each of us imagined what it might be like to go lower than low, what I have heard called the subbasement of the soul. So many metaphors to be tangled up in. I don't like using the word depressed or depression. These are clinical words. I don't like using clinical words in a colloquial way. It's an example of language corrupting knowledge through misuse. The gauge of the Kola super deep borehole is quite small. Depression sounds more to me like something concave, not cavity, maybe more like dimple. We often talk in terms of depth. Sorry, I lost my... as in the depths of our depression. But in reality, it is a question of breadth or spread, not how a disease spreads, but the elongation of a singular thing in a unitary way over a wide space in the shape of a circle or oval. That is what I picture in my mind when I imagine what my mood looks like. There is no machine that could have detected what was wrong with me. You suggested the talking cure, said that you'd leave if I didn't get help. I asked you if sadness ever manifested itself in physical pain, and if it did, where exactly in the body. You indicated with your hands in the torso or upper body, but I kept pressing, in the body or on the body. Of course, we've all heard the term heartsick, but I felt it everywhere, on my skin and hair. I asked you where's the liver, the kidney, the lungs, questions only you can answer, but we haven't spoken in years. The air was very cool on my face as I opened my eyes. It was that time of day when the menace of night subsides and the morning begins to show its face in the growing quiet that will soon be overtaken by delivery trucks and workers preparing the city for another day of use. Siedelmeyer quietly packed up his few things and rolled me one last cigarette. He set it gently on my knee and thanked me for the frankness of my disclosures. We exchanged numbers, and then he quietly shut the door behind him. Later, he sent me several voice memos of what I had said, and on certain occasions, I will listen to them. Sometimes it improves my mood, and sometimes it does the opposite. I spent the next few days working through a pack of Camels and drinking in the same sidewalk cafe, hoping to see him again, but he never turned up. Later that week, I took the train to Zurich. For some reason, I had scheduled my flight to leave from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Bryan. The complete name of the story that he read, the story which appears in the spring 2024 issue of the Santa Monica Review, trying to find it, is "The Water Will Take Care of the Rest." And if you'll indulge me for just a moment, I want to call out some beautiful connections vis-a-vis this particular issue and do a kind of a shout out for community, including the community that's assembled here today. The next reader I met at the Community of Writers more than a decade ago, and that's a place that's committed, a nonprofit that's committed to encouraging writers and advancing the best of craft and caring for other writers. I'm proud to be associated with the Community of Writers, and it wasn't until I showed up at Beyond Baroque that I realized that we're sitting in the Wanda Coleman Theater, and I couldn't be more pleased, especially because the final piece that's featured, a nonfiction piece that's featured in the current issue, is by frequent contributor and good friend Charles Hood, and it's called Lost and Found, Wanda Coleman's Desert Boxes. I had the privilege of interviewing Wanda Coleman and Austin Strauss just a year or so before Wanda died at KPFK, where I host a radio show called Bibliocracy, and to have these two amazing people in the studio was the experience of a lifetime. They moved up to Lancaster, and you can't make this stuff up. It's the most heartbreaking and funny and beautiful essay about Charles, who sort of took care of Austin a little bit after Wanda passed away, discovering at the dump outside of Lancaster much of what you might call the Wanda Coleman and Austin Strauss archives floating around at the dump. And he did his best to rescue a bunch of it. It's a beautiful meditation and a celebration of two of our favorite people. And of course, you already know, Wanda Coleman is sort of the unofficial poet laureate of the city of Los Angeles, and somebody who many of us relied on for inspiration, wisdom, provocation, and a real role model of a cultural worker. There's lots of other connections here, and you can kind of find them as you go through the table of contents and the contributors' notes. Back to the pleasant responsibility of introducing Karen Moulding, who does a gorgeous, long, very funny piece about sort of the domestic and political and parenting challenges of the COVID area. She's got an impressive bio. Her work has appeared in KGB Online Literary Review and many other places. I'm not going to read the whole thing. She was named first runner-up in the Red Hen Press Quill Prose Award in 2019. She's a founder of the Bi-Coastal East Village Writers Workshop, which features Zoom and in-person workshops, and childcare for beleaguered parent-writer attendees. Well done. She earned an MFA in fiction from Columbia. A frazzled but happy solo mom, she splits her time between LA and New York with her 9-year-old daughter, Finn, an actress extraordinaire. Hi, Finn. Karen, who bemoans having the name Karen, we love you, Karen, is currently writing about the hilariously misunderstood plight of stage moms. Please welcome Karen Moulding.
Thank you, Andrew. I'm really happy to be here. I'm honored to be reading here and in Santa Monica Review. I'm just going to skip around from the beginning of my story. I tried to get it to under 15 minutes, and I hope it makes sense. The parking lot. My 6-year-old put down her New Yorker and stared at the black screen of her Chromebook, waiting to finally see some other kids after the entire spring and summer alone. I reached over her and fumbled with the Zoom. "Good morning," said a blurred figure in a buzz of static. What I could finally get done while this Zoom teacher supervised my little girl. Bryn perched on the cheap storage ottoman that doubled as her desk chair in our temporary one-room apartment, i.e. my mother's converted garage. My teetering mountain of papers beckoned from the dining table / my desk behind us. Bills, abandoned writing projects, grocery lists, and yellow stickies about overdue forms tangled hopelessly with long ribbons of expired CVS coupons that I couldn't bring myself to toss. Silence swallowed the static and the blur froze. Bryn pounded her fist at the air. "Mommy, fix it!" "Not everything is Mommy's fault," I snapped in a panic. "Do you want the kids to hear you scream like that?" Definitely, that was the wrong thing to say. "Validate," I reminded myself. I'd been juggling Bryn, plus my overdue pile, in one room with no school since March. No time to read the parenting books, which tended to calm me, even as I scoffed at them for not being real psychology. Plus, never even mentioning caffeine-frazzled solo sperm donor mommies like me. Bryn, on the other hand, had no problem with the book's non-analytic and mainstream content. "Consequences are out," she had said to me last night, peering judgmentally over the cover of "Stop Yelling, Start Connecting, Now." I was in the middle of threatening to nix TV if she didn't get in the shower. "It's all about empathy now, Mommy. Oh, and choices. You should say, 'Honey, would you like your ice cream first and then TV, or the other way around?'" The blur unfroze and spoke. I'm sorry about that, boys and girls. Heroically, I did not say, see, it was not Mommy's fault. I even hid my fearful cringe when the figure introduced herself as Mrs. Simmons. I switched to gallery view, a pastiche of faces. Bryn almost fell off her seat in excitement, recognizing some kids from kindergarten. Hi, Emma. Connor. Connor! Please mute, admonished Mrs. Simmons. In first grade, there's no talking unless you're called on. Bryn's little eyebrows wrinkled in their heartbreaking way. Still, her hand shot up at the question of what everyone read over the summer. I'm going to tell them how I just started from the mixed-up files of Mrs. Basil E. Frankweiler. But after hearing about alligators under beds and pigeons driving buses, Mrs. Simmons moved on. Why wasn't I called on? Bryn whimpered. It's her first day too, I said. The pandemic is hard on everyone. Wrong thing to say. Again. I mean, I know this is hard, honey, but we have to give Mrs. Simmons a chance. Mrs. Simmons posted a poem made of one-syllable words and directed the class to read together. The fat cat sat, began the chanting. That's when Bryn slid under her miniature plastic desk. It's too boring, she proclaimed, a conviction with which I could hardly argue. I just want to read The New Yorker and play chess online, like every day. Period. I'm sure it will get better. I looked longingly at my work pile. Bryn, are you there? Mrs. Simmons said. It's okay if you can't read. A lot of us can't read. Mommy, do I really have to? No, I sighed. We'll figure out something else. And I clicked off the screen. Can we go back to New York now? We need to stay at GM's a while longer. Why? Because it isn't safe to fly now, and Mommy had to sublet out our apartment since it's hard for Mommy to work and pay the rent right now. That was definitely a better answer than, because there is a makeshift morgue outside our window in New York, and I felt pleased with myself. But Bren sobbed. What if the renter breaks my toys? Her genius generally failed her when it came to toys, TV, candy, and bedtime. Can we at least go to the park today? Remember, it's closed. But, I added quickly, we can go to the parking lot with your scooter and some chalk. That was one perk to the stay-at-home order, the empty bank lot on the corner. Okay, I'm going to skip ahead. You have to read the Santa Monica Review for these interim scenes playing in the parking lot, the abandoned parking lot, and some other things about suburbia. On the first day of Bryn and Mommy's school, Bryn raced through 5 pages of second grade math, which I knew was too easy for her, and a book report about the borrowers in an hour and a half. I wasn't sure what to do next. Sensing my doubt while I searched through her workbooks, Bryn stood and jumped hard on her storage ottoman. The felt-covered cardboard collapsed on her toy stash within, and she toppled to the floor. Ow, she screamed, my calf, my calf. And look at my chair. Now I don't have adequate storage. Where will I keep those toys? I managed not to say it was her own fault, but her face registered my exasperated grimace. Maroon patches sprouted on her cheeks. She rolled away from my outstretched arms and shrieked louder and louder until I started to snap. That's enough, and get off the dirty floor, louder and louder. My mother finally appeared at our door. Her past noon paint-speckled bathrobe, dazed expression, and white roots somehow accentuating the flattering expense of her grown-out hairstyle. Bryn sniffled and they hugged. Please keep it down, she said. Painting, I asked. Trying, she admitted. She'd found it difficult since the shutdown. Bryn was about to resume screaming when, like a referee's timeout, a bell sounded from the iPad, the daily FaceTime from my dad. GP, Bryn shouted, transforming so instantly that I found myself wishing she could wail a little longer, so my father could see how hard this all was and validate, yes, validate, my self-pity. Some acquaintances from Facebook had managed to visit their parents, covering everyone up in double masks for the flight, and then quarantining in a hotel for 10 days and/or only seeing the relatives outside in masks. I was on a campaign for my dad and his wife Joan to have Bryn and me over for such a visit. GM went back to her main house, and Bryn retreated into our garage studio corner with her iPad so she could have a private play date with her main man. Now, Bryn, I heard, do you have to beat me at chess like that? I can never remember how the knight moves. "Oh, GP," Bryn giggled, "do I have to explain again?" In a half hour, she would whimper, "Just one more minute," when he said he had to go. And that night, snuggling into me in the fold-out sofa bed we shared, she would say, "When are we visiting GP? We used to see him all the time. Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, my birthday, your birthday, my half-birthday." Recently, I had switched from "in a few months" to "we're working that out," and then back to "definitely in a few months," following one disastrous fumble when I'd said, even though I should have known not to, that it was not safe to visit GP, and Bryn had cried for so long that my mother came in her nightgown to shush us. I opened my laptop now. "Mother's helper wanted," I wrote in the Nextdoor app. "Afternoons outside in our driveway while I am inside working. Everyone masked. ASAP!" Exclamation, exclamation, exclamation. The babysitter arrived the next afternoon in a glow of LA sun, reflecting off oversized custom earrings and sparkling eyeshadow. Bryn and I stood outside our door and inhaled in awe as she emerged from her mother's SUV and slipped a rainbow mask over her lip-glossed mouth. Like a 14-year-old Mary Poppins, the babysitter lugged a fat satchel. "You must be Bryn," she squealed. "Look, I brought some toys." Out of the satchel and onto the little outdoor patio table in my mother's driveway came a set of 24 sparkly marker pens, colored construction paper, also sparkly, male and female Barbies with rainbow hair, sparkly, colored hair ribbons, a set of Star Wars figurines, how did she know, and Clincher, sparkly child's nail polish. She even got the color right, purple. Bryn dropped my hand, and without even a hello, they were already past that, she picked up the nail polish. "You're the salon lady, and you're sitting here. I walk in and say, 'Miss, the JoJo Siwa rap show is tonight, and I need—'" The sitter sat immediately, and I retreated inside in pleasant shock to gather an Amazon-ordered snack fest of the sort of food people like to pretend was not prepackaged, processed, and not from Amazon. Tinfoil boxes of roasted seaweed, organic string cheese with pictures of cows in Paris on the plastic wrappers, and no sugar-added fruit rolls. The salon ladies hardly looked up when I made my delivery. Though I could hear their giggles through the poorly insulated wall, I still faced the most relative quiet I'd had in 7 months. I sat at the table/desk and opened my laptop. I clicked on my email and downpoured a cascade of unpaid medical bill notices that needed insurance information, unpaid New York internet and utility bills, a combative email from my tenant full of pretend complaints, and an announcement that she was leaving immediately and would not pay a penny for the past month, and, with a tactical brilliance I almost admired, implying that in fact I owed her money for her distress. An invitation from the city to apply for rent forgiveness, noting a just past priority deadline for my income level, missed or impossibly looming deadlines for publications, a week's old request to hire my immediate editing services, hundreds of Facebook notices that someone I didn't know had commented on the post of someone I knew a little, a homeschooling form due in 1 hour, and many, many expired offers for discount makeup from CVS. A short story I'd started months ago sat pinned to my taskbar. I entered the blur of simultaneous on-hold Muzak and online form filling and hopeless email pleas regarding expired deadlines. I took out an unwise credit card advance toward my double utilities and everything else. A few times, I hovered my cursor over the story, but I'd begun it when I still thought the world would want to read about non-pandemic characters, and even the title made my own eyelids heavy. And then the 3 hours had passed, and Bryn was tugging on my sleeve, telling me the babysitter's mommy was there. "Yes, honey, I'm here," I said with robust cheer. And we went outside to the sitter, whose name, of course, was Claire. "Thank you so much," I said, and Claire's eyes crinkled above her mask. I waved to her mom in the car. I hadn't noticed earlier that she also had unwashed hair and a deflated brow. I was as put together as anyone now. I'd even turned in a form on time today. The sitter, Claire, gathered her supplies and started walking with her bag to the SUV. Bryn stood with me for a second, then dropped my hand and burst into tears. "No!" she wailed. She leaned away from me and looked with wide eyes at my face, like she was looking at a stranger about to abduct her from her real mommy. Her real mommy being this 9th grader, this Mary Poppins-esque babysitter who clearly had met more of her needs in 3 hours than I had in 7 months. But I don't want to go, she explained more than pleaded, as in, finally the answer, so how logically can it go away? Sobbing, she darted to the sitter and wrapped herself around her leg like a koala to its tree. Claire tried to walk while I tried to pry. She's coming tomorrow, sweetie, I kept saying. But all I could see was my little girl's face and my little girl's face and my little girl's face. Not what I actually ever saw, but what it must have looked like while I looked only at my iPhone. Look at this, Mommy. The hope that must have been in her eyes, while mine glazed over and over and over, riveted to my phone screen, trying hopelessly to catch up, put out just one email fire, answer one text, order groceries, or just berate myself more and more the less and less I got done in my mother's one-room back house where, of course, I was my little girl's everything and her nothing. I managed to free Claire's leg and she dashed to the car. See you tomorrow, that was fun, she called in that teenage, happily oblivious way. The SUV rolled down the drive and my daughter raced after it with her arms up, wailing, an ancient Greek widow at the pyre. I held my breath when the SUV was out of view, waiting in dread for what would come next. What snacks can we have now, Mommy? Bryn asked, as if she had not just set a sound record. By the way, I loved you so much. She usually reverted to this baby way of saying love during our bedtime cuddles, when her tired lisping began. You got me the best sitter and you're the best mommy ever. She wrapped her arms around my back. I pressed her sweaty head to my belly and closed my eyes, wishing it could be forever, and aware of how much easier that wish was, patience was, when the day with her had been partial, when even 3 hours of work had gotten done. It was when we were walking back up the driveway that I noted that something else had been different about that day, besides just the sitter, my work, and my relief. No call from GP. You'll have to read in the journal to see what happens next. Okay.
People sometimes ask me about the nature of the stories in the magazine, and I don't have an answer except I fudge it and I say sometimes it's writing that's wildly imagined or writing that creatively reimagines. So I'm especially grateful to people who write realistic stories like Karen, because I think they've chronicled in a way that sometimes doesn't happen what we've all been through together the last few years, the struggle for Black lives, the opposition to absurd war and to, I'm sorry, fascism, and COVID, and the everyday politics. And I guess that's the case for Denise's story too, the sort of the interface between the natural world and the human world. And then, of course, there's the people who wildly imagine, and their artistry and their skill at communicating their dreams, their humor, of the fabulous and the absurdist side of our lives is also much welcome and appears in a lot of the writing in the Santa Monica Review. How's that for the beginnings of an introduction for James Warner, our final reader? James was very nice to me and to the Santa Monica Review when he was a volunteer coordinator up in the Bay Area, where we were invited to participate many times for Litquake. And now he lives down here. This is his 3rd or 4th appearance in the Santa Monica Review. And I'm sorry that the bio that I'm about to read doesn't mention one of my favorite of his writings, which is a hilarious and wonderful novel titled Her Father's, what is it, James? I got it wrong. All Her Father's Guns, right? Sorry. And but otherwise, it goes like this. James Warner lives in Long Beach, California, where he sometimes teaches yoga classes. That's funny too, actually. only sometimes. Besides Santa Monica Review, his short stories have appeared most recently in River Journal, Your Impossible Voice, and Web Conjunctions. He is one of the moderators of Wednesday Edition, a weekly Zoom writing workshop, which is free to attend for anyone who's interested. And a longtime favorite at Santa Monica Review, James Warner.
Hi everyone. So let's see, I'll hold this so I can read it. Mechanismus. There is no board in the Mechanismus box. There is a components bag containing wooden pipes, pentagonal tiles, hexagonal tiles, and some plastic screens. There is a spinner to determine whose turn it is, a stack of cards with messages on, a pair of red film glasses, some clods seemingly made of dirt, some cogs, and a 7-sided dice that may have been added accidentally by the manufacturers, a company in Dusseldorf that went bankrupt in 1985. Just only for intelligent people, reads the legend on the box. A game for 19 players, ages 12 to immortal, English, Francais, Spanish, Deutsch, Italian, or Portuguese. There is a picture of a family playing the game on a train, although a train can never have been a good place to play Mechanismus, including as it does so many easy-to-drop, hard-to-find pieces. Mechanismus comes without instructions, but I assume each move involves drawing a card and attaching a component from the components bag to another component. Because it is the rarest, obscurest game we possess, and because I like it that I do not understand how to play it, our store is named Mechanismus after the game. A bell rings, telling me a customer has come into the store. I ask her what she wants. She is a woman looking for a book, something easy to read on the bus, short, light, happy, easy to read for someone who never reads, something very popular, a love story. As our store carries no other books, I sell her the complete works of Laszlo Krasznahorkai. Books and collectible board games, says the sign outside our store, misleadingly, since few of our board games are for sale. I resume my study of Mechanismus. The bell rings again because another customer has come into the store. This is an unusually busy day for us. The customer says, I wish to buy Mechanismus. I explain this is impossible. He says he is a board game designer who's been traveling all over the world seeking a copy of Mechanismus. I claim I've never heard of it, but he has already seen it spread on the table in front of me. It is also the name of your store, he points out. That is how I found you. My name is Jürgen. Do you know how to play Mechanismus? I designed the game myself. With each turn, you either make a move or reshuffle the cards. One has the option of eating a clod also. They are made of very dark, bitter chocolate. I try one and he is correct. The chocolate is stale yet of unmistakable quality. In 1982, Jürgen says, when Parker Brothers introduced the game of Risk into West Germany, our government wanted to ban it actually on the grounds it might awaken militaristic impulses in our nation's youth. The solution found was to rewrite the German rules for Risk, so one did not conquer territories, but liberate them. Conquering or liberating, a question not of game mechanics, but of packaging. One thinks of Michel Foucault's declaration that meaning is a superficial impression, a shimmer or foam, while system or structure alone are foundational. A customer comes in, a man looking for, I don't remember the name, but the cover might be green, by or about a celebrity, the one who's in all those movies everyone talks about. Without taking my eyes off the board, I sell him the complete works of Laszlo Krasznahorkai. We get a lot of returns of this item. With Mechanismus, Jürgen says, I wanted to invent a game where the mechanics were the theme. I drew the board first, based on an image that came to me in a dream. Then I thought up the rules. He spins the spinner. I go first because you ate the chocolate, and the first to eat the chocolate is the last to move. He uses components to form the board as you go along. He attaches a hexagonal tile to a pentagonal tile and throws the 7-sided dice away, saying, that should not be there. I have a horror of dice. I spin the spinner. It is Jürgen's turn again. The screen can be so placed as to obscure certain sections of the board from other players, and Jürgen places the screen so I can see the pentagonal tile, but can no longer see the hexagonal tile. He spins the spinner. Now it is my turn. I attach a pipe to the pentagonal tile. If I win this game, Mechanismus is mine, he proposes. What causes me to nod my approval of these stakes? Perhaps it is simply my sense that the mania for hierarchy and conflict that possessed Jürgen's ancestors. I picture them as students in dueling fraternities, cavorting in taverns, a scene out of Hermann Hesse, lives on in him in a geekier and more sublimated form, and so I hate to disappoint him. The board takes shape in front of us, appearing sometimes more like a mandala, sometimes a map. Jürgen takes a rubber band from a pocket and uses it to attach 2 cogs. Are rubber bands supposed to be in the game, I ask? We forgot to include them. There wasn't a lot of time to playtest this before we went bankrupt. Jürgen spins the spinner. Very few copies of Mechanismus were ever manufactured. Your turn. I turn the cog and it knocks over a screen. For my next move, I stack another pentagonal tile on top of my first pentagonal tile, having only just understood this is permitted. I like the phase of a game when I have no understanding of what I am doing before the gestalt of the game has revealed itself to me, when my confidence my actions are coherent is entirely feigned, when I'm trying to make moves that accord with the rules but cannot guess if my moves are good or bad. With Mechanismus, this phase of the game goes on a long time. Jürgen himself looks quite confused. It turns out to be a game of skill that includes just enough chance to inflict ultimate despair. Mechanismus is like chess, except if every few moves one of your white pieces change sides to become black or some other color completely. Mechanismus is like Tetris, except if the pieces flew out of the screen at you to inflict flesh wounds. Mechanismus is like dating, except if, well, actually, Mechanismus is exactly like dating. I hate throw your dice and move your mice games, Jürgen says. A game should organically capture the way success and defeat are rhythmically interwoven. I am no longer a designer myself, he explained, but a collector who travels the world seeking out forgotten board games of the 1980s. One thing you learn in this business, people only think they know what they want. The middle game of Mechanismus is comparatively straightforward. Eventually, the board will consist solely of pentagonal tiles, in which case I will win, or solely of hexagonal tiles, in which case Jürgen will win. The reason Jürgen sometimes puts down a pentagonal tile is that if there are exactly 5 pentagonal tiles touching each other, all 5 of them are replaced by a hexagonal tile. If there are exactly 6 hexagonal tiles touching each other, all 6 of them are replaced by a pentagonal tile. Eventually, I draw a card forcing me to add another pentagonal tile in such a way that 5 of my pentagonal tiles are replaced with hexagonal tile, as a result of which I lose all the screens that conceal from Jürgen what I'm up to. But the addition of this tile causes 6 of his hexagonal tiles to be replaced with a pentagonal tile, causing him to lose all his pipes and cogs and his rubber band, not to mention 3 additional hexagonal tiles that were stacked on top of his other hexagonal tiles. From this point on, his eventual defeat is inevitable, although what clinches things is his drawing the card telling him to put on the red film glasses. These make it impossible for him to read the instructions on subsequent cards, which are written in yellow highlighter. Each time he fails to comply with an instruction, he loses another hexagonal tile. Jürgen says he frequently designs snowball systems into his games where a runaway feedback loop may unfairly punish one side in what until then had seemed a close contest. This arises from the energy inside of me, Jürgen explained. A game designer attempts to encode the underlying mechanisms of being. This is the game where I came closest, but for years I have been unable to find a copy. Now I think I will never own one. Although I win a game, I give Mechanismus to Jürgen anyway. It ought to belong to him, since if it belongs to anyone, I suppose, or perhaps his evident dismay at the arbitrary way our contest has turned against him, awakens chords of identification and sympathy in me. Also, I'm bad at running a business. God would want me to let you have this is the best explanation I can come up with him. Although I do not believe in God, then again, maybe God's non-existence makes it even more important Jürgen should have the game. He thanks me economically and sprints out of the store, clasping it to his chest, screaming victoriously in German. Now that I no longer possess a copy of Mechanismus, I reflect I will have to rename the store. Also, I will never find out how the game would have worked with 19 players. The bell rings, and a customer comes in, a woman looking for bleakly mesmeric apocalyptic genius novels, employing post-communist dialectic that will leave me tortuously suspended on the brink of an abyss of monstrous revelation. I tell her we're closed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, James. That is Mechanismus, which appears in the new issue of the spring 2024 Santa Monica Review. I hope you all like the cover. It's from a world-renowned artist, lives in Mexico, named Artemio Rodriguez. The 4 writers who read for us this afternoon are worth researching. please go check out their books. And I hope you will indeed want to read the entire stories of those who were able to read only from their excerpts. It's a terrific issue, and I'm really pleased to present it. I just want to say thank you to Santa Monica College, which for now 36 years has supported and advanced the project of literary arts, civic literacy, and engagement with the arts community and beyond in Southern California. And I want to thank our readers, Denise Heyl McEvoy, Karen Moulding, Bryan D. Price, and James Warner. And most of all, thanks to you for coming out, and thanks to Beyond Baroque, and thanks to you people who are watching this. We'll see you next time. Thank you, Karen. Oh, yeah, that was really fun. It was so good. You were fun. Yeah. Folks, there's copies of magazines, lots of them. Please take